Michigan.
Thank you, Chairman Arrington and Ranking Member Boyle, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today and sharing your perspective. I really do appreciate it. Mr. Higgins, as a fellow alum of the University of Michigan, I'm not going to ask you anything about football, not this year anyway, but I will have a question or two for you. As I listen to some of my colleagues, it's somewhat interesting to hear them talk about an energy crisis in a country where they have been trying for months to derail the efforts, because they happen to have been led by Democrats and the Biden-Harris administration, to bring down energy costs for consumers and to create new manufacturing jobs that pay a good wage and actually do allow people to take care of their families in a way that they ought to be able to. For instance, just last week, House Republicans put a bill on the floor to completely undermine the electric vehicle tax credit from the Inflation Reduction Act. This bill would have hurt American manufacturing, a source of many of those good-paying jobs. It would have raised taxes on American families who are attempting to purchase one of those vehicles, and it would have jeopardized new investments in hundreds of thousands of jobs in my home state of Michigan. And I think we do need to set the record straight. The effort to undermine the EV tax credit is interesting because in 2017, when Republican-led Congress scoured the tax code for every change that they could possibly imagine, they left intact the electric vehicle tax credit. But unlike our proposal, unlike the Inflation Reduction Act, allowed for a person making $1 million a year to purchase a $300,000 electric vehicle and claim the credit for it. Under our policy, we put caps, income caps and MSRP caps, auto price caps, so that the eligibility for the credit was going to who we intended it to go to. For the first time, though, we are seeing an increase, first time in a long time, coming from a manufacturing state, an increase in manufacturing. We lost manufacturing jobs under the previous administration. We've significantly gained manufacturing jobs under this administration. We've seen over $175 billion in private investment in auto manufacturing, in battery production, critical minerals. These investments are putting people to work in good-paying jobs, and I can point to those jobs. I see them in my home district, in mid-Michigan, companies like SK Siltron in Bay County. Americans have saved $1 billion on new vehicle purchases from this tax cut this year, an average American saving $1,750 a year. We've seen manufacturing pull back their supply chains from China, reinvesting here in the United States in American auto workers. So when we talk about energy crisis and then try to undermine some of the efforts that we're engaging to try to bring down the costs of this transition to cleaner energy. And of course, we can stand here, sit here, listen, and continue to hear the denial that there's anything called climate change. I mean, if that's the starting point for the conversation, it kind of nullifies anything that anybody's trying to do to address it. So I wonder, Mr. Higgins, if you could, just in the brief time we have, just describe what the repeal of the EV credit would do on job creation, on the cost for families purchasing a vehicle, and most importantly, on our economic competitiveness when it comes to auto supply chains. I mean, China will dominate the EV space if, in fact, we don't have an industrial policy that allows us to be prepared for that transition. Mr. Higgins.
So China has been trying to dominate the electric vehicle supply chain and export markets. And their exports are surging around the world, but not here in the United States. Here we've invested more than $75 billion in manufacturing since the Inflation Reduction Act, and largely for EVs, which is creating new job opportunities, as you have described. And this is really critical. It's helping to reshape the global supply chains. It's paired with incentives not only for the purchase of a new vehicle, but also a used vehicle, and incentives for manufacturing at each stage of the supply chain. So the assembly of the car, before that the battery, before that the battery cells, before that the critical minerals processing. And at each stage in the process, it gives the United States leverage over the global supply chains. It's helping to keep us competitive with China and prevents the terrible effects that would have on our domestic industry.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. And again, I thank all the witnesses. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. I yield back.
Thank you.